Have you ever found yourself in a relationship that felt strangely draining, yet almost impossible to explain to others? Maybe on the surface things looked fine, even normal, but deep inside you constantly questioned yourself. You wondered, am I overreacting? Am I too sensitive? Maybe I'm imagining things. You spent sleepless nights replaying conversations in your mind, trying to figure out why you always felt like the bad guy even when you did nothing wrong. If that sounds familiar, you may have encountered what psychologists call a covert narcissist. When people think of narcissism, they usually picture the obvious type, the loud, arrogant person who brags endlessly, dominates conversations, and demands the spotlight everywhere they go. That image is easy to recognize, but covert narcissism is different. It hides in quiet corners, behind masks of humility, sensitivity, or victimhood. It's subtle, harder to detect, and often far more damaging because it works in the shadows. A covert narcissist doesn't announce their superiority with a megaphone. They whisper it, disguise it, and plant it in your mind until you begin to doubt your own worth. That's why in this video, we're going to look closely at 10 red flags you simply can't ignore. These signs may seem small on their own, but together they form a clear picture of manipulation and control. My goal is to help you see them for what they are, so you can stop blaming yourself and finally understand the truth of what's been happening. Because the truth is, when you're caught in a relationship with a covert narcissist, whether it's a partner, parent, coworker, or even a friend, you often don't even realize how much of your energy is being stolen until it's almost too late. The first red flag is what psychologists often call the endless victim narrative. Covert narcissists are skilled at turning nearly every story they tell into a tale of how they were wronged or unfairly treated. It doesn't matter whether the subject is their childhood, their job, their friendships, or their past romantic relationships. Each memory is carefully framed to highlight their suffering. At first, these stories can be extremely convincing. You hear the pain in their voice, you see the look of sadness in their eyes, and it draws you in. You begin to feel sympathy for them. You want to comfort them and perhaps even admire what seems like resilience in the face of hardship. But as time goes on, you start to notice a troubling pattern. In every version of events, they always cast themselves as the misunderstood hero, while someone else is consistently painted as the cruel villain. There is never a hint of self-reflection, never a willingness to take even partial accountability for what might have gone wrong. And when you gently suggest that perhaps they had some part in the situation, the reaction is swift. They act offended, wounded, or deeply misunderstood. What they are really doing is securing your loyalty by constantly positioning themselves as the perpetual victim. Once you begin to accept this narrative, you naturally slip into the role of their rescuer, and the more you play that role, the more they thrive, feeding endlessly on your empathy as if it were oxygen, ensuring that you remain tied to their story and their need. The second red flag is passive-aggressive behavior, a tactic that is far less obvious than the explosive anger seen in overt narcissists. Instead of shouting or openly showing rage, the covert narcissist chooses subtlety, cutting with whispers rather than blows. Their hostility often shows up in disguised ways, such as forgetting to do something important you asked of them, rolling their eyes dismissively when you speak, or making sarcastic remarks that seem like jokes on the surface but are actually designed to sting. These comments and gestures feel small in the moment, yet they carry a weight that lingers. When you confront them about these behaviors, they quickly turn the situation back on you. They'll brush it off with phrases like, "You're too sensitive," or insist, "I was only joking." Over time, these constant little jabs start to chip away at your confidence. You begin to wonder if perhaps you really are overreacting, if maybe your feelings are exaggerated. This slow erosion of self-trust is not an accident. It's intentional. The covert narcissist uses this method to keep you off balance, to make you question your own judgment and perception. By creating doubt in your reactions, they ensure that you become increasingly dependent on them to define what is acceptable, what is normal, and what is not. This subtle control deepens their hold on you without ever needing to raise their voice. The third red flag is what many psychologists describe as quiet superiority. Unlike the overt narcissist who loudly proclaims their greatness, The covert narcissist cloaks their arrogance in a mask of humility. On the surface, they may seem modest, even self-effacing, but beneath that exterior lies a deeply ingrained belief that they are somehow better, more important, or more enlightened than everyone else around them. They rarely brag in obvious ways, but if you pay attention, you'll notice the subtle cues that reveal their hidden sense of superiority. You might hear it in the way they sigh with disappointment about how ordinary or predictable other people are, or in how they quietly imply that their suffering has given them a deeper sense of wisdom, spirituality, or intelligence. Comments like, "I just don't fit in with shallow people," might sound innocent at first, even relatable, but the truth is that statements like this elevate them above others while disguising the elevation as honesty. Their superiority hides behind self-deprecating remarks that lure you into seeing them as modest or humble. But in reality, these comments are carefully designed to make you offer reassurance, praise, and validation. In this way, they secure admiration while placing themselves on a pedestal, maintaining the illusion of humility while feeding their ego at the very same time. The fourth red flag is emotional withholding, a tactic that covert narcissists use with precision. Unlike the overt type who lashes out with harsh words or visible anger, the covert narcissist punishes in quieter but equally destructive ways. Instead of shouting, they withdraw. One day, everything between you may feel normal, even comfortable, and the next day the atmosphere suddenly shifts. They become cold, detached, and distant, leaving you confused and unsettled. You search your memory, trying to figure out what changed, but there is no clear explanation. When you sense the tension and finally ask if something is wrong, they'll shrug their shoulders, avoid eye contact, and calmly say, "No, I'm fine." But you know deep down that they're not fine at all. That silence, that refusal to communicate, becomes its own weapon. It creates an invisible wall between you and them, a wall that you are expected to break down by working harder for their approval. This silence turns into a powerful form of control, because the more they withdraw, the more anxious you become. You start overthinking your every word and action, desperately trying to identify what mistake you might have made. Without realizing it, you begin adjusting your behavior to prevent their coldness from returning. And that is exactly the trap. They place you on an invisible leash of anxiety, conditioning you to bend and twist yourself just to avoid the discomfort of their emotional absence. The fifth red flag is playing the martyr. Covert narcissists are masters of guilt. They'll remind you of everything they've done for you, every sacrifice they supposedly made. They'll say things like, "After all I've given up for you, this is how you repay me, or no one else would have tolerated what I've been through." These statements aren't expressions of love or devotion. They're weapons. By framing themselves as the long-suffering martyr, they make you feel indebted. And when you feel indebted, you're more likely to comply, to apologize, to overgive, and to tolerate behavior you should. The sixth red flag is envy disguised as critique. When you share good news, maybe a promotion, a new opportunity, or even something small like a compliment someone gave you, the covert narcissist often reacts with subtle deflation. They might say, "That's nice, but don't get your hopes up," or "Are you sure you can handle that?" On the surface, it seems like they're being practical or concerned, but underneath it's envy. Your success threatens them because it shifts the power dynamic. If you rise, they feel smaller. So instead of celebrating you, they chip away at your joy, all while pretending to be the voice of reason. The seventh red flag is gaslighting. This is perhaps the most damaging tool in their kit. Gaslighting means distorting reality until you question your own memory and perception. They'll deny things they said, minimize the hurt they caused, or tell you that you're exaggerating. For example, if you confront them about a cruel remark, they'll say, "I never said that," or "You're imagining things." Over time, you begin to feel like you can't trust yourself. And that's the ultimate goal, to make you doubt your own reality so much that you become dependent on theirs. The eighth red flag is hypersensitivity to criticism. Even the mildest suggestion can send a covert narcissist into spirals of self-pity or rage. If you say, "Maybe we could try it a different way," they'll respond with, "So you think I'm useless, or I can never do anything right in your eyes?" Their fragility forces you to tiptoe around them. Careful with your words, careful with your tone. You end up swallowing your needs, because any expression of dissatisfaction becomes a landmine. Their hypersensitivity silences you, which is exactly how they keep control. The ninth red flag is guilt-tripping and shame. Covert narcissists know exactly how to press on your soft spots. If you need space, they'll accuse you of being selfish. If you say no, they'll insist you're uncaring. If you put up a boundary, they'll say you're abandoning them. This relentless guilt-tripping keeps you in a cycle of proving your loyalty. You end up apologizing for things you didn't do, bending over backward to show you care, while they contribute little in return. It's exhausting, but it's intentional. By drowning you in guilt, they keep you trapped. And finally, the 10th red flag is a hidden hunger for control. Covert narcissists don't always grab control overtly. Instead, they weave it quietly into your life. Subtle comments that influence your choices, small manipulations that steer your emotions, patterns of silence and guilt that bend your behavior. They might not say, "Do it my way," but somehow you end up doing things their way anyway. That's the essence of covert control. It's invisible, but it shapes everything. And once you start resisting, once you stop complying, that's when their mask truly begins to slip. Now, here's why all of this matters. Being trapped in a relationship with a covert narcissist doesn't just hurt your feelings. It slowly rewires your sense of self. It makes you question your worth, your memory, your instincts. It makes you feel guilty for having needs and ashamed for asking for respect. Over time, you become smaller while they grow stronger. But the good news is this: the moment you begin to recognize these red flags, the spell starts to break. Awareness is the antidote to manipulation. Once you see the patterns clearly, you can stop personalizing them. You can stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start realizing, "This isn't me, it's them." And that realization is powerful, because covert narcissists thrive on confusion, silence, and doubt. They thrive when you don't have the words to describe what's happening. But now, you do. You know the red flags, the endless victimhood, the passive-aggressive digs, the false humility, the silent punishments, the martyrdom, the hidden envy, the gaslighting, the hypersensitivity, the guilt-tripping, and the quiet but relentless hunger for control. If you see these signs in your life, please know this: it's not your fault. You didn't cause it. You didn't deserve it. And you don't have to stay trapped in it. Healing starts with clarity. Clarity leads to boundaries, and boundaries lead to freedom. So, as we close, remember, covert narcissism may be subtle, but once you recognize the red flags, they can no longer control you. Knowledge breaks the spell, and with that knowledge, you can begin to reclaim your power, your voice, and your life. You are not too sensitive, you are not broken, and you are not alone. You are worthy of relationships built on empathy, honesty, and love. And the sooner you recognize the signs, the sooner you'll find the freedom you've always deserved.